Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome from wherever you are in the world to this afternoon. It's here in London. My name is Venu Branch and I'm Interim Deputy Chair of Kent and Medway NHS and Social Care Partnership Trust. I know we have a very large number of people online for this inspiring topic. In fact, 705 of you have signed up, so thank you for that. The topic is inspiring the next generation to become great leaders, and we're looking at the experiences of consultant psychiatrists from the South Asian diaspora. And this is about personal experiences. So this is not about sharing research findings, and that gives you license to ask some questions about the personal experiences of our contributors today. It's to the Royal College's credit that they've picked up on great interest in this topic. And I know Catherine Ayres, who's convened this session for us, will share with you links of previous sessions and resources marking South Asian History Month. Isabel and Katie are facilitating in the background, and following this seminar, which aims to inspire South Asian practitioners from a range of backgrounds, they will share the resources with you. The way the session will work is that first we'll hear from each speaker, and we've asked them to speak for about 10 to 15 minutes. And during the presentation, we'll ask you to make use of the Q&A facility on the software. Hopefully you'll see that on your screen. And you can upload your questions. And after we've heard from all the speakers, we'll select a number of questions for the speakers to respond to. I want to assure you that if you raise a question and we don't get time to answer it during the session, it won't disappear. We're going to field the questions to the speakers after the session and distribute the answers to all participants. We're going to aim to finish the session just after 5 o'clock, and I will close the session after we've had the Q&A session. So we have, as our speakers, 3 consultant psychiatrists, leaders in their field. And I'm going to introduce the first of them to you now. So his name is Dr. Hassan Mahmood, and he is a consultant psychiatrist for adults with learning disabilities. Amongst his many achievements, he's devised a programme for learning disability services based on the core objective of stopping excessive use of psychotropic medicines to manage challenging behaviour. The model was described as outstanding in recent CQC inspections. Dr. Mahmood is going to talk about living and working in inner city Birmingham. Hassan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Venu, for the introduction. Much appreciated. Thank you to everyone that's watching. Believe you can and you're halfway there. This is a well-known quote by Theodore Roosevelt. I've been a consultant psychiatrist for 2 years and I work in Birmingham Community Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust. I was born in multicultural inner city Birmingham in the 1980s. My parents came from Pakistan to England in the 1960s when it was all about survival and making ends meet. My parents made great sacrifices to ensure my siblings and I had an education. Looking back, it wasn't easy growing up in inner city Birmingham and being from a working class background. We had a number of barriers to overcome. We competed against people who'd already been exposed to higher education, professional working across generations, people who already had doctors in their families. So I completed my A-levels to a high standard and applied to Sheffield Medical School, where I studied and worked hard before returning to Birmingham to do my junior doctor training. As a first-year junior doctor in what we call Foundation Year 1, I worked in psychiatry placement in inner-city Birmingham, where I was shocked to see how quickly acute mental illness could be treated and a significant burden of mental illness across different communities and the stigma, particularly around mental illness in the South Asian communities. So given that, it was an absolute no-brainer to apply for core psychiatric training, which I managed. Whilst I was a core trainee, I encountered some of the most difficult times in my life. In 2013, my mother passed away. I struggled to digest it, and it was a bitter pill to swallow. Supporting people through their mental health issues when trying to cope with my own struggles was the hardest experience of my life thus far. I had lost my greatest cheerleader. From her diagnosis until her passing, it really put life into perspective for me. Eventually, I had the first experience of working in learning disability services in Birmingham, and I loved the holistic way in which the team worked and the empathy shown towards our vulnerable patients. I truly felt like I'd arrived in my natural home. Somehow, during that time, I managed to pass my exams, and because of my interest in learning disability psychiatry, I applied for higher training successfully and had 3 very enjoyable years during specialist training. I returned to Birmingham. I also worked in Coventry and Warwickshire. I encountered inspirational leadership role models during that time, particularly in Drs. Harm Ball, Dr. Jeff Marston, and Dr. Dave Perry, who are wonderful people that continue to inspire me every day. They back my abilities and encourage me to be the best that I can be, and I therefore try to instill the same belief in other people. Towards the end of my training, I took the opportunity to complete it as an acting consultant in Birmingham. For some time, I'd wanted to return to serve the local people. I wanted to give something back to the community in which I had been raised. It was a steep learning curve over 3 months, but it really provided ideal grounding for a consultant role. Then in July 2018, I did it. I completed my training and became certified as a consultant in psychiatry of learning disability. It was a wonderful feeling to know that after years of hard work, I'd finally achieved my goal of becoming a consultant. I felt very fulfilled, yet enthusiastic and excited about the prospect of taking on a leadership role as a young person. This motivated me to apply for a consultant post in Birmingham. This wasn't easy. It required many weeks of intense preparation and some frustrating nights at home with my family, which I can laugh about now. So I commenced my consultant role in August 2018. It's been a real pleasure to work with such great colleagues to provide the best care we can for our patients who rely on us to advocate for them. The first year was a real challenge. The keys were getting used to the job, system, working with colleagues, and most importantly, striking positive, long-term relationships with patients, families, and carers. I know many of you are watching this webinar from across the world today. For those of you who may not know, Birmingham is the second largest city in England and is very multicultural. There are a significant proportion of people from ethnic minority backgrounds living in the city. If you go to some areas, people from these backgrounds constitute the majority. And given my background, it's been really beneficial to speak multiple languages, understand the culture, and how it can affect the health beliefs for some people. I have personally led in ensuring that our service has been tailored to meet the needs of people from all backgrounds. I guess this is something that one would expect, but I found that over time, my leadership skills have developed and my confidence has increased. I find myself able to provide valuable input into a variety of meetings at all levels. Leadership for me is about leading from the front. Do not expect others to do what you would not be prepared to do yourself. I think it's about bringing your personal qualities to the table. My qualities include energy, enthusiasm, and believing anything is possible. One must be a team player. You should listen to others' opinions and concerns and alleviate their anxieties. Decision-making skills are obviously crucial in being a good leader, and it's important to remember that at times you need to be flexible. During some of the darkest times, I remembered the two mottos of someone who has always inspired me. Firstly, the bigger the challenge, the better I perform. And when you're in a tough situation with your back against the wall, you have to keep going until you reach your goal. So I've told you my story from the beginning until I became a consultant in the first year. I was just bedding in as a consultant psychiatrist, and in March 2020, COVID-19 hit the world. Amongst the uncertainty around the world, I was unexpectedly asked to step in as interim divisional medical director for the learning disability division. It came as a real surprise, but having always believed in taking challenges head on, I took on the role without any hesitation whatsoever. The start of my role in March 2020 coincided with a lockdown within the United Kingdom. I supported the division through the busiest times, including the peak and through to restoration and recovery. I had to attend a large number of meetings and had to balance my various roles. During the role, I learned a lot about my own personal qualities when I was challenged the most. I made sure that I was always aware of the regional and national impact of COVID-19 on our service, and I provided leadership in ensuring our patients' needs were met. Most importantly, I learned about people during this role, and that was an invaluable lesson in life. When I look back at my time in the role, which finished last month, unexpectedly, it was particularly enjoyable and opened my eyes to a new world and energized me to take on a future senior leadership role. In the role, I was sometimes the only person in the room from my background. So the question for me is, where are the South Asian senior leadership role models? I struggled to find senior leadership role models from my background until very recently. I implore you all to break down the barriers. I throw a challenge to you all to make a change for the better and to inspire people who come after us to take the gauntlet, break down the barriers, and be part of those boardroom conversations. I'm thankful to be a doctor and work alongside some of the most empathic people in serving the most vulnerable people in society. I would like to thank my father and my late mother, if she were here, for the sacrifices they made, especially given the uphill struggles they faced and overcame. I would also like to thank my eldest brother for setting the path for the rest of us to follow. I am a real-life example that dreams can come true. However, this is merely the beginning. Don't settle for the status quo. We need to be part of those boardroom conversations. Only we can be the change that we want to see. Challenge yourselves. Dream big. Dig deep. Whatever you dream of doing, you can do it. Nothing can stop you as long as you're willing to work hard, make those sacrifices, and keep moving towards your goal when times are at their toughest. Remember, the bigger the challenge, the better I perform. And believe you can, and you're halfway there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hassan. And I can't tell you how familiar some of those resonances are to those of us from similar backgrounds. The honesty there of the highs and lows and your views on the tenets of leadership, particularly valuable. So everybody, keep those questions coming in. So our second speaker, I'm very proud to say, is Dr. Afita Kazi. Afita is an old age psychiatrist by background and has set up one of the first dementia crisis teams in the country, a model that delivers excellent care to patients with huge savings across the system. She also happens to be Executive Medical Director at KMPT, where I'm Deputy Chair. And we all gain so much from stories, and here's one that I'm particularly looking forward to. Dr. Kazi is going to talk about her personal journey from medical student to medical director. Over to you. Go ahead, Afita, over to you.
Can you hear me? Okay, I presume you can hear me, and I know there's loads of people here today from all over the world, and I thank the Royal College for offering us this opportunity to be able to share our personal stories today, which is what I'm going to do. The previous speaker, Hassan, has started this in such an inspirational manner that it's really amazing now for me to take on from there and carry on with my journey. I'm going to add my reflections on my journey all along, and hopefully that will be useful and inspiring for people who are watching. I'm going to now share my screen, and you should be able to see my slides that are coming now. I am hoping you can see my slides. If you can't see them, can somebody prompt me, please? Then other people can share them if you can't see my slides. But if you can, so there's a title slide there that tells you who I am. I'm an Executive Medical Director at Kenton Medway NHS and Social Care Partnership Trust. Moving on now.
So we can't actually see your slides at the moment.
Afifa, I'll share your slides for you,
okay,
because they're not coming out.
Thank you, Katie.
There you go, you can start now.
Okay, great, thanks. It is a little, the experience is a bit strange because I can't see you. It's not as interactive as it would have been if we were face to face, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to move the slides along as I talk. So next slide then, please, Katie.
So we can see those slides, Afifa. So you might not be able to see them because you may only be able to see yourself, but the rest of us can see them. So carry on.
Okay, great. I'll carry on talking then. So the first slide there tells you where I'm from. I have got fond memories of being born and brought up in Kashmir, and I call it the most beautiful and picturesque place in the world, which it definitely is. Going into medicine wasn't something I chose initially. I'm going to be completely honest with you, and this was something, and many of you from the South Asian community will be smiling and will be nodding their heads in acknowledgement that it was your parents who decided what you did. And if you weren't doing really well at school or college, you got pushed into either you're going to be a doctor or an engineer. And that's how I ended up in doing medicine at this medical college, which now looking back, I don't know how we survived. They made us slog. They made us work so hard. And now I'm really grateful I had that opportunity that I was there. It was an amazing experience, many, many years of hard work, and then having to look after people. And I don't know how we did it, about 50, 60, 70 patients in an outpatient clinic, back to back, back to back. But I think the experience was amazing, and I learned loads of stuff as a trainee doctor there and went on to do radiology for a year. For a number of reasons, which I'm not going to go into really, I ended up here, which is Worley Hospital in Brentwood in Essex, which is not there anymore. I came over to the United Kingdom in 1995, and I was at the doorstep in Worley Hospital looking for a job in psychiatry, as I could not find a job at that time in radiology in the country because they were really hard to get. And with my background, nobody was going to look at a trainee who would come from abroad and suddenly find a place in radiology. It was a no-go, impossible place to go. So I settled, which at the time I thought, oh gosh, well, this is not really what I want to do, but let me have a go at it. So I turned up on the doorstep of the Worley Hospital and I stepped in through those doors and I haven't looked back. Psychiatry has just given me so much pleasure and satisfaction. The journey was just amazing. The time I joined it, have I got Worley Hospital on the screen?
Yes, you have, Afita.
Great stuff. Okay, Katie, if we can move on to the next slide. Okay, I'm presuming you've got the next slide up there. So yes. At the time I joined Worley Hospital was a time where the last of the asylums up and down the country were closing, and there was a buzz. There was a buzz of being able to treat people and discharge them back home. And I thought, well, this is not a bad thing to be doing at all. So I set up in my training, and looking back now, if you look at the history of psychiatry, psychiatry has come a long, long way. Only not that long ago, you can see that picture up on your screens, the horrific, the inhuman methods of treatment for people who suffered with mental illness. That time wasn't too long ago. With the advent of antipsychotics, realizing that, oh gosh, this is something we can treat and we can cure, people started to be treated in hospitals and discharged and back home, and the asylums were closing, and Wally Hospital was, the last ward was closing when I joined as a trainee. So I've trained at that time where it was ingrained in me that you've got to treat people and get them out quick, and the experience was really amazing. For those of you who are not psychiatrists, probably do not know how rewarding it is to help a person through the depths of their depression and go through them with their journey and make them realize their dreams again. It is just a totally amazing and rewarding, satisfactory experience for anybody. And to rescue people from the ravages of psychosis and dementia, it is totally rewarding. And hence I later on trained in old age psychiatry. So next slide, please, Katie, which is here. I finished my training years very quickly and passed the RCPsych exam, which at that time seemed to be a really huge achievement for me. And I cherish this photo here that you can see on your screen with Mike Shooter. This is also behind me in my study. I really don't know what you can see, whether you can see me or you can see just the slides. So really amazing experience. And soon after that, I was appointed to a consultant post at, next slide, which was now the Maskell Park Hospital after Wally had closed all its asylums. I joined and I thought, well, reflecting on what had happened till then, I thought, well, gosh, I've worked really hard all these years as a trainee. And I thought it was just my hard work and sheer determination to do something great that made me go through those initial years, even though they were hard. And I was I think it was exactly 5 years that I'd started my training to the day I got appointed as a consultant. And there I was, excited. I could do what I could do. I could manage and run services as I wanted. And I joined and I realized, gosh, I've got a ward full of people who've some been there for months and months. And I've got loads of referrals coming from care homes, loads of referrals coming from GPs. What am I going to do with this? I thought for a minute that, well, I've got to sort this, otherwise I can't handle this, I can't manage this. And that drove me to do something with it that makes it work and do something good for the patients. And what I started to do was lots of little changes, which now looking back is like I have done. I kind of changed the whole system around in a manner that my job used to be the best job in from what I heard from the trainees, that everybody used to be fight to come to me because there were hardly any inpatients. We wouldn't admit anybody. We'd go out and treat people in the community. We'd get people better. And they didn't need coming to hospital because we were dealing with problems and difficulties early by having a network, a liaison with the GPs and the care homes. This led me on to develop a model for people with dementia, because that seemed to be in old age psychiatry. A lot of the referrals were linked to people with dementia, struggling with little, which were little things, but which were turning into crises and causing people to be in hospitals. There's a link for a video there, which you can watch if you want later on, which is a Department of Health video, which was made to showcase best practice in dementia care across the country some years ago. Next slide, please, Katie. You probably have a slide now with the Alzheimer's Society leaflet on it. The Dementia Crisis Support Team worked really hard, and the admissions in the system for dementia fell down so much that there were millions of pounds of savings, and we managed to keep people at home without the need to come into hospital. So it was published in a number of places. We won awards. Next slide. The Eastern Academic Health Science Network Award should be there on the screen. And following on from that was the HSJ Award, which was the icing on the cake, which was a reward for all the hard work. And more importantly, I could see the difference that we were making to people in the community, and how happy people were to be provided care in the comfort of their own homes. What a great difference it made to people's lives. At this point in time, I was the Associate Medical Director for Essex for NELT services, and the desire to be able to make a difference to a lot of people. and the determination to get there made me apply to higher senior management roles. And I applied to the position of an executive medical director a few times. So here I have something to say, but when I reflect on it, it makes me think that really I must have worked hard and must have been determined. And I looked at all my mistakes and all my failures and learned from each one of them and moved forward and moved ahead. So I didn't get appointed the first time around, but after each interview I came out and thought, gosh, next time they ask me this question, they're going to get a very different answer. It's not going to be what I've said today. It's going to be X, Y, and Z. So I was eventually appointed. Next slide, Katie. Eventually appointed as an executive medical director in Kent. But the next slide is, before that, this is my life as a consultant really. It just shows, there's pictures here of me. What I did all along was empower staff around me and build the system around me in terms of giving them knowledge and expertise so that they could then carry on doing things, little things really, that you can sometimes do to make a huge difference to patients' lives. Next slide here is there's a number of photos which just show you the lots of fun that I've had while I've been on my journey of delivering services and changing services and improving things for better. I've also had loads of fun with my teams. So there's pictures here. I'm hoping you can see the slide. There's pictures here of me with my team. We've baked cakes, we've raised money for charity. I've been in various national and international conferences where I've presented the dementia care model. We've presented in conferences and posters. And there's also me cooking a meal up there for the team. I've had fun all along, and I've built teams and built staff all around me and empowered them to be able to provide care to people, and that kind of makes my job, it's a lot easier if you've got loads of support around you and people can do things without needing you there all the time. And that's what I've done all along my journey. There's a picture next here. I'm hoping you can see it. Is my induction day at Kent and Medway Partnership Trust as a medical director, where I feel that I can now make a difference to a lot of people's lives. I can improve care for patients, and I can have a role in improving staff well-being, which is just so crucial. Well, being appointed to this role is well, it was really hugely exciting, but soon after COVID hit us, a really dreadful thing, really sad time, having lost colleagues and a dear friend as well, really sad. But for me as a medical director, I think, well, it's been a great time to start in a way that I've been able to really, really quickly adopt to all the changes, know the people, and be part of a system that has been able to deliver amazing care to people. I couldn't feel more proud today of my staff, of how quickly they changed their ways of working, and we were able to deliver care. And this is true for the whole NHS at the moment, how quickly we've adopted and how quickly we're looking after our people. Next slide, please. The key messages from what I've said today is hard work and determination. If you want to get somewhere, if you're aspiring towards a leadership role, don't let anything put you off it. Just keep working hard. Learn from your mistakes is another thing, is one of my mottos really. If you've done something wrong, if you failed at something, don't let that put you off. Learn from it, make yourself better, and try again next time. And also, what I really enjoy and want others to be doing is to take others with you, so that we have other people alongside us, that if we can't do something, there's other people who will pick the baton up and run with it. And that is, I think, my last slide, and I think my time is done as well. I'm really, really hoping that you've enjoyed that, and people listening, particularly trainees, if they're listening here, they feel inspired, one, to do psychiatry, and secondly, to aspire to senior management roles. Nothing is impossible if you're working hard and you're determined to get there. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Afita. And already we can see some themes emerging here. Parents, the importance of parents, the importance of hard work and determination, and also reflection. So thank you for that and your lovely photographs. So now our third speaker is Dr. Mudassir Firdousi, who is a consultant psychiatrist in Southwest London and St George's Mental Health Trust. He's also an honorary lecturer at the University of London and the South West London regional representative for the General Adult Psychiatry at the Royal College of Psychiatrists. He's going to talk to us about training and working through different cultures and continents from Kashmir to the United Kingdom. Dr. Ferdowsi.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me and see me. I'm not using any slides and I want to talk to you today directly. Thank you very much for joining us. As mentioned by Afita, I also come from Kashmir. I was born and brought up there. And I did my medical school in Jammu. It's called ESCOMS. While I was in medical school, I wanted to be a surgeon because that was my first clinical posting. But what happened in 2002 during my what we call as internship or foundation year in the UK training system is I had 10 days posting in psychiatry at Government Psychiatric Disease Hospital, Srinagar. For some reason, the hospital had been burned down just before I started there. There were only few wards standing and few makeshift rooms where patients were being seen. One of my then SPRs, Professor Ashid Hussain, who is a professor now, asked me to see a patient and do a mental state examination. And when I went to see that patient, he gave me a very interesting story that he's just come from Moon, he was at a wedding, and that was the time I got very, very curious about psychiatry. And within 10 days, I actually changed my mind from being a surgeon to a psychiatrist, although I did do a house job in surgery later on before joining psychiatry formally in 2003. As most of you know, in India, getting any postgraduate degree, one has to sit a common entrance exam. And thousands of doctors take the exam after their MBBS. During those days, there was only one placement for psychiatry in the whole state in the hospital. So one had to score very high to get to the position. Luckily, I made it to top 10. I think I was 6th on the list. And I remember when I went to the counseling for the said stage. And when I asked them, I want psychiatry, all the panel members, they put down their pens saying, why, what? Why do you want to do psychiatry when you can do anything else? And I remember when I came out from the room and all the doctors who had come for the counseling on the day were actually looking at me in a strange way. That was probably wrong with this man. Why does he want to do psychiatry when he can do probably surgery or radiology or something else more fancy? I think that was a stigma at the time, but I think there were also inspirations, few of the people. I remember when I told my parents that I want to be a psychiatrist, they went quiet for a bit, but then they said, well, you know best for yourself and we will support you as you want to do it. And I also remember during the same time, I think there were people who wanted to do psychiatry and the in-laws or their fiancés would threat that if they do it, they will break the relationship and it wouldn't work. So I did then finally started my psychiatry training in 2004, which in India is MD Psychiatry as RCPsych here. And I completed the training in 2007. And after that, I did work in Kashmir for a bit longer in National Mental Health Program before moving to UK in 2009, 2010. At the time, the Royal College of Psychiatrists used to run a program called RCPsych Equivalence, and I did apply for it. And I think the response I got after probably 6 to 8 months saying that I couldn't prove that my degree was equal to RCPsych, citing various reasons. And reflecting that back on that, that's why I wanted to talk about better training in different settings was obviously working in UK now and working as consultant and as a teacher and a trainer. I know the know-how, what's happening, how we do work-based assessments, how we have kind of extracurricular activities, SSMs, other programs. That's not the case in most places. So back home, it was again you do 3 years training. You see lots of patients, lots of clinical exposure. You work with very supportive people who are very, very busy. At the time, we were only few consultants in the hospital, few SPRs, I think 6 trainees or MD students. And we would see probably 100, 200 patients a day, which sounds probably ludicrous when we talk in context of UK, but it was. In a small room, you'll be whispering in the patient's ear, and on the sheet, you will just write F20, F19, F25, rather than the full diagnosis, which also used to help with stigma, because at times people would say they rather not have the diagnosis on the paper, and they would rather like the something which their family or friends can't identify with. So I couldn't actually prove that I had actually trained as a psychiatrist, and I could take a history or do a mental state examination at the time. And there's also another interesting story I want to share is to apply for MRC-Psych, I had to actually give the curriculum and syllabus which I had studied and passed an university exam in India, but I couldn't find one anywhere. And then I sent my friend to Medical Council of India in New Delhi. He went in person, and they asked him for some fee, which he paid. And then to my surprise, I have kept the documents still. They had actually photocopied some syllabi from textbook psychiatry and stamped it as Medical Council, saying this is what we do. That doesn't mean that trainees who train in India don't train well. They do really work very hard, and I think at times harder than the trainees we do here. You have to actually answer long answer questions, which are harder to answer if you don't have studied everything, rather than multiple choice question. There's also a long case, short case, and rather than multiple kind of cases as in CASC exam here, which becomes tricky. And I think that there is strong hierarchy in there where things are meant, and you have to behave, you have to respect your seniors. It's not as easygoing as we do it here, but at the same time, I think the resources are limited. I think from access to journals, to online resources, to the libraries and other things is quite different and challenging, which I hope will change in the future. I think things are quite static, but looking back at the same department now, I think I'm glad that after I joined on 5th, 6th rank, I know in next year as trainee psychiatrist, my friend, he was 2nd in the list, he joined as a psychiatrist, and after that, there was a culture shift, and many people in the top ranks started joining psychiatry. And gladly, I think up until a few years ago, there was no female psychiatrist in the whole Jammu and Kashmir, but now there are almost like 20, 30 female psychiatrists. And I hear all the new psych trainees at the moment, there around 21 of them are females. And there are a few female psychiatrists as well in the hospital. And I remember my then guidance supervisor, Dr. Professor Mushtaq Magoo, who used to sort of say or do couplet often when we were low or in despair that things are getting bad. मैं अकेला ही चला था जाने बेमंजिल मगर लोग आते गए कारवां बनता गया, which I can translate simply is that I was walking towards my destiny on my own, and then people came and we became big group as it goes. I don't have much time, so I want to come back to UK now. So after I was put down for MRC-Psych, I basically joined psych training. Although it was very easy. I think I had experience, I had a degree, I had a publication, so it was easy. I joined at Morsley and kind of went through and did the exam, which is a difficult exam, but is quite doable. You all can do it, I'm sure. And after that, I joined as a psychiatrist. I think qualified in general adult and liaison psychiatry. Then I joined Southwest London St. George's, which was nearer to where I live at the moment, and have been doing inpatient psychiatry for a few years now. And I have taken various roles in the trust, outside the trust. At the moment, I'm also interim vice chair of British Kashmiri Medical Association, which we formed newly to support people who want to come here for training or for academic reasons. So essentially, looking back at the journey of me being a psychiatrist, I would, I think, reiterate, I wrote a blog for Royal College a few years ago. I think when I was teaching that there has never been a dull moment when you're a psychiatrist. All of all patients are different, even though they may have same diagnosis and you may use the same medication, their stories are different. And you look at human beings very closely. It helps you to reflect and become a better human being. And it essentially, as Afita said, that you see people getting better, you see people getting back to their lives. It does bring better out of you and better out of other people. And I think it gives a wider view of yourself and of the world, and I think you become more human at the end of the day. And I think I'm glad that like Royal College of Psychiatry has really done well this year. We have got very good recruitment in psychiatry. All the placements have been filled, and I hope that both here and back in Kashmir, where I sometimes still write articles in newspapers regarding mental health and other similar issues, things will keep improving, and we will take on this further and keep going. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's another great presentation. And I can tell you that if any of you who are presenting are looking in the chat room, you're getting lots of great feedback. So well done for those three. We've also had some great questions. Thank you to all of those who are sending them in. I thought I would start with a couple. And then I'll keep looking in the question and answer room to see which others are coming through. So the first one I'd like to ask to perhaps Afita to reflect on this one. So Afita, the question was, did you find that there was a culture shock when you came to the UK? And how did you cope with that, as well as having a limited social support network? Perhaps you can reflect on that for us.
It was a big culture shock, Venu, and many of us who have come to the UK or moved out to the Western world from that part of the world will identify with this, and you suddenly feel that you've come out of your comfort zone where you have your parents and your friends and your extended family around you to support you in times of need. You suddenly feel you are on your own. Even though I have lots of family here, but and friends now, but at that time there was some family, but you really feel, and being away from what you at the time were used to and brought up in, and the system, you knew everything, you suddenly come out of that system and you don't know anybody. It is a struggle. It is an uphill journey. And without that support network around you, going through all the stages in your career development, as you go on, you do exams, you go through various appointments, etc., etc. At each stage, you kind of feel that, oh gosh, only if mum lived around the door, she could look after the kids. And there's none of that. There's not. So I think you have to work doubly hard to accommodate for all of that, and you have to be really organized, and you have to think of 10 different things at the same time, because there's nobody else out there who's going to pick that up for you. So it is hard, and it has been challenging. I've had some really challenging times where I've really felt.
So you really have to develop your own resilience and your ability to organize yourself, multitask, all those sorts of things, all those kinds of skills, which ultimately serve you in your professional life as well.
That's true.
Yeah. Good. Mudassir, would you like to reflect on that as well? Because you've done a similar journey.
So I think mine was because I'm not going into personal details, so I had no plans to come to UK, but life brought me here. I was going to be a psychiatrist in Kashmir, that's why I was trained, and I was working there. I think it is difficult, it is challenging. Obviously, you have to unlearn many things. So the way we do medical school back in Kashmir, and we learn things, and how the structure works is completely reverse here. So it's like when I started driving in UK, whenever I used to come from side road, I would put my foot on the brake, and the driving instructor told me, why are you doing it? I said, well, someone when come and hit me, he said, no, people will wait for you. It doesn't work that way. But I had to unlearn similarly in medicine, doing psychiatry, many of the things. Like one of my trainees, she's just come from India now as a CT1. She would get up every time I would come into the room, and that's the culture back home. But I had to actually tell her, no, it's not necessary. You can sit down and you don't have to call me sir, because I haven't seen Queen yet. So I think that many of the such things, and clearly we miss the whole thing about friends. You have to make new connections. That is definitely challenging, and even the exams are very, very different. So you see real patients at one place and you see actors at another place, and it's very difficult to switch if you haven't done it before as a medical student. So that becomes challenging, and I think that's an additional kind of difficulty for people who come later or who come from outside. And I think college is doing things for that, and there are supportive groups as well. But I think that's why if we look at the RCPsych pass rates, they're definitely not better for people who haven't trained in medical schools in UK. They're far worse than the people who have trained here.
So one of the things that you both mentioned there was the importance of social networks, but presumably also professional networks. And we have a question here, which is about barriers to securing appointments and barriers to your progress, because we all know how important networks are in finding out information about opportunities that are available. So could I ask perhaps Hassan to reflect on this point? What barriers have you encountered to secure appointments and move forward? What kind of challenges?
Personally, I've not faced any huge barriers in getting to, the current role that I'm in as a consultant psychiatrist. But I know that other people have faced barriers. So clearly there are barriers out there. As I've said, when I've been in meetings in my recent role, I've been the only person of my background within the room, and it makes you think, what are the barriers for people to get to that position? I really don't know the answer to this, but I think, people who aspire to go to senior leadership positions, we need more people to come forward. There are a number of us out there who are very highly qualified, trained to do these roles. I don't know whether there's reluctance for people to apply for the roles. I don't know if there's a sense of we won't get the role, in a sense of kind of helplessness, but actually we can do it. But personally, as you asked, in terms of barriers, I've not faced any thus far, but I'll be interested to hear the thoughts of others.
Yeah, so thoughts of others, thoughts of Afita, any barriers that you've faced, apart from perhaps self-limiting barriers that Hassan referred to?
Yeah, I would agree with him, actually. I think it's perhaps we sometimes believe we can't do things, and this is our own perception. I haven't faced any major barriers in the system, as I would call it. The barriers, I think, are more to do with, our own lives. And maybe they're not barriers, but they are kind of factors that influence how we are on our journey, on our professional journey. The lack of professional networks, certainly, yes.
Okay.
If I had done my medical degree here and my early training years here, I probably would have more professional networks and know more people. And so I have to work doubly hard, really, to establish those relationships. I wouldn't call it a barrier as such, but I think we have, because coming from a different background, having trained outside, we have to work doubly hard, or I've had to work doubly hard, really, to establish relationships and professional relationships.
So just picking up on that point, because certainly my parents always said to me, you will have to work doubly hard. And you've mentioned doubly hard, and Hassan referred to the hard work and determination. Who would like to say something about that topic, about, is this really true that we all have to work doubly hard in this system in order to make progress? So let me ask Hassan first, and then I'll come to Mudassir for that.
My parents said exactly the same thing. They said that in order for you to get to a certain position, you've got to work twice as hard as everyone else, because if it comes to a point where you're equal with the candidate, you may not get chosen. That was a message from my parents, and they weren't professionals. That was just the thing that seemed to be said by parents at that time. And I think that gave me and a lot of other people extra motivation to work extra hard. to be the best candidate for any particular job. As I've said, I mean, there may be barriers. I mean, clearly there are barriers if there aren't a large number of people from our backgrounds in senior leadership roles. I'm not exactly sure what the barriers are, if I'm honest with you. But the having to work doubly hard, I think, is something that's that a lot of people do say, and a lot of parents did say it. So I wonder whether it's true.
Mudassir, how about you? Was that said to you? Did you feel that when you were progressing through the system?
So basically, I have not been in UK that long. My parents are not here. I think they believe in me. I think they think I'm competent in whatever I do. I think my observation working here for last just 10 years now only is that I have seen people from kind of my kind of background and my friends. I think we are less likely to take chances to do things, even if there are opportunities at times. There is some reluctance. I don't know why. I think it's probably either this self-fulfilling prophecy that if I try, I will not get it because already someone else is going to get it, which I think is not always true. So speaking to friends who sometimes think that there is discrimination against them or whatever, I haven't personally experienced that. I think whenever I have tried to do something, people have been supportive. They have guided you through things like that. But clearly, I think to me, it seems like if we want to do something, as Afita said, she went for a few interviews and ultimately she is the medical director now. It is doable, it's possible. I think it's just taking the initiative and going through it rather than thinking, no, because there's someone else, I can't do it and it will not be given to me. I think that's not the attitude which would help.
Okay. Hassan, you mentioned barriers perhaps, or you referred to coming from a working class background. Do you perceive barriers for those from a working class background?
I think there clearly were barriers because the area I grew up in inner city Birmingham, especially 20 plus years ago, education wasn't the first thing on people's minds. People came over from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, various other parts of South Asia with a modus operandi of survival. So often people had to support people back in their original countries. They included working hard in very much jobs such as bus drivers, taxi drivers, factories, steel workers, etc. And so people didn't always think about education. Some people didn't want to settle in England for that long. So education wasn't the first thing that people thought about. So I think that's partly what that's very important. I think the vision wasn't necessarily there, but also I think what was very important is that people, therefore, because they didn't have the connections, had a lack of resources. And as I said earlier, I was competing against people who had generations of people who were professionals, including doctors. So you're always up against it initially. So I think if you are from a working class background, there are a number of barriers that you do face. And I think especially if you're from the South Asian community.
Okay. Hassan, you also talked about role models, and a question that's come up is about the importance of role models. So I wonder whether you and Afita, maybe Afita to start with, because Afita, you mentioned role models in your presentation. Talk to us about the importance of role models in your journey, and then Hassan, I'll come to you for the same thing.
So I've had, I think I've been really fortunate to work with people in my training years who were hardworking, determined, and I've been able to learn a lot from them really, and progress in my journey. And I try to role model basic human values really. Compassion is something I'm really, really passionate about. And building others around me is really crucial to me. And that's something I really cannot, the benefit and value of that, helping and supporting others around you, inspiring others, motivating others, and taking a lot of people along with you is kind of, that is really close to my heart. So I think I have been fortunate to have really good role models, even though I didn't have a lot of network when I came here. People have inspired me. I don't want to name anybody in particular, but yeah, there are really good people who have inspired me along my journey. I think as well, I would like to add a word really, and thank you to them as well. Really inspiration and really a force behind me, my mum, to work harder and to aim higher and higher and go higher and higher.
So a combination there of role modeling and mentorship, really. Hassan, how about you? Can you reflect on your role models or mentors for us?
Absolutely. I think role model is really, really important. And if I go back to my parents, my dad was a bus driver. We came from Pakistan. For over 40 years, he did the job. My mum, unlike many people of her background in the 90s and early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, she worked as a lunchtime supervisor. And they were both very, very inspiring to me. They always, a bit like as Afita said, kind of said, aim for the top, keep going, make sure you do the best that you can do. They were always very inspiring, always wanted me to be the best I could be. My eldest brother, I'm sure he's watching, is a surgeon, and that's down to the hard work, primarily, well, of course of him, but primarily down to my parents and the sacrifices they made. They never really went on any holidays, never spent any money on themselves. And he always inspired me. And I remember back in 95 when he graduated, he stuck his certificate on the wall. And I remember I was in year 4 and I said, I'll put my certificate up there as well. And so he really inspired me, and it continues to inspire me until now. In terms of other people, I've mentioned doctors Harmbaugh, Jeff Moss and Dave Perry, amazing human beings, wonderful personal qualities, and I have learnt a lot from them. And also I mentioned a role model of mine for many years who's always had 2 mottos: the bigger the challenge, the better I perform. And whenever you're in a difficult situation with your back against the wall, you have to keep going until you reach your goal. All of those things have really inspired me, especially when the chips are down, given some of the really difficult experiences I've been through, to keep going. And it's really, really helped me.
Thank you. So now a very interesting question came out of the Q&A room, which was about leadership training. And at what point should we identify the next series of leaders? And at what point should people begin their leadership training? And was it hard for you to start thinking of yourself as a leader? At what point did that dawn on you? So let's start with Mudassir and then perhaps move to Afita.
I don't think I am a leader in the leadership sense yet, but I clearly see the training in UK. I think it's part of the training and curriculum. We supervise our junior doctors, our students as we go along. As SPR, you then supervise. You have to do project, attend meetings, and as consultants, clearly you are the team leader along with a few others. So there's co-leadership at the moment. And you have a responsibility towards your patients, towards your organization, towards your colleagues. So few of the things come through. But I think definitely if there's a bit more formal training around leadership, particularly for people who come from outside of BAME background, that would probably go a longer way for people to achieve more. As I said earlier, that we are reluctant to apply for jobs, which may be in the board or in the room. We'll just stay in the. So most of my colleagues would do the ward work and that's it and go home, rather than why do we take the hassle? I suppose I think that is the barriers which we need to break.
Okay, Afita, what do you think about that question? When is it appropriate, do you think, to start people's leadership training, or when did you begin to realise that actually people were looking to you as a leader?
I think I'll answer the first part first. I think this really needs to be included in medical training. We come out at the end of medical training. I've got a clue about what's what about medical leadership and management, and people feel really lost. Really, when early junior consultants sometimes feel really lost. They haven't got a clue about that side of things. All they've been trained in medical school is the medical training and nothing else really. But I think recently some universities have started a management module, and I certainly know of a student in Liverpool, I think, or that part anyway, where he's doing a management module as part of his training, which I think is great. This needs to be built in formally, definitely from a very early stage, so that people who are interested, it's not everybody's cup of tea, definitely not. And there's so much else that you can develop yourselves in. There's and now more and more opportunities coming along. There's teaching, training, QI, research. There's a variety of leadership and a variety of roles that you can really develop in or evolve into. And if people are interested in management, then I think definitely from early on, this needs to be grown from early on. To me, it was a bit of a shock, really.
Okay, and then another question that came up was, what are the opportunities for shadowing others in leadership roles? Are there formal opportunities, or does that have to be done through your own arrangement or networking? Hassan, perhaps you can take that one.
I think wherever you work, if you speak to people within leadership positions, you'll find they're very helpful. Make an appointment with your medical director or associate medical director or divisional medical director, clinical lead. People are happy to help and share their experiences about leadership. I think that's usually, the best way to kind of have some thoughts initially about leadership. Also, I mean, in terms of the last question about leadership training, I know that within the West Midlands in the last few years, there have been some sessions and leadership days for core and senior trainees, which I think have been really helpful.
Good. So we've talked a bit about barriers. Somebody's asked a very interesting question about whether your background has given you advantages in the system, maybe in terms of speaking different languages or having empathy with patients. Perhaps I'll ask each of you in turn to reflect on that. Afita, would you like to start? What advantages has your background given you?
I think it has its plus points. I'm able to understand. So every now and then we get people from Asian background with difficulties that perhaps somebody from a white background is not able to fully understand. And I'm very aware of that I probably am able to manage and handle that situation in a slightly different manner, which has its own advantages. So certainly identifying with people from my own background, whether they are patients or staff or whatever context I come in contact with them, I feel I have a much better understanding because we share a background. And the language also comes handy. So I have, in my previous job, in my clinical job, I have seen patients where we needed a translator, and I said, well, I'm gonna go in, and we don't need a translator, and I'm gonna do that for you. So it does have its advantages, definitely. And I think sometimes, I do feel I'm a bit celebrated as well, that you are from this background and, you've achieved so much. So I think there's that benefit as well, of course, and you can role model. So I do think it has its plus points, and I really celebrate those plus points.
Great. Hassan, any plus points for you particularly?
Plenty of plus points working in Birmingham. As I said earlier on, it's very multicultural. The census in 2011, can't remember the exact figures, but I think it said something along the lines of 14% of people originally from Pakistan in terms of families. People from Indian ethnicity was around about 12%. And also you've got people from Bangladeshi diaspora, and people, sometimes their first language isn't English, and they can speak Urdu, Patwari, Mirburi, various other languages. And it's actually very, very useful to be able to speak multiple languages, especially where I work in Birmingham, because it's really important to understand the context in which people communicate, and also the environments in which they live as well, and how they live. I think is really, really important. And I think that's helped me to lead in tailoring our services to ensure that they're suitable and the best they can be for people of all backgrounds.
Yes, and thank you for highlighting there the fact that, as Ajit Shah, who made a comment there, that BAME is not a homogenous background. There are many different languages and many different communities. Mudassir, can you reflect on perhaps some of the advantages that you've had coming from a different background?
I think definitely there are. So I work in Southwest London, and I think when you have been in Southwest London, Tooting to Balham area, you would probably think you are somewhere else from the shops and everything. So we have got a very mixed population, and I have often Urdu speaking people on the ward. I haven't had a Kashmiri patient yet on the ward. So Punjabi, South Indian, so, which I can sort of understand and from that languages. And I think clearly it does help at times even with the managing patients with kind of diagnoses which are culturally bound, it is a great help there. And but at times I have also seen that there sometimes people can be reluctant, that if they think you're from their neighborhood, they may not be, because the stigma is still there with psychiatry. People often confuse me with Persian, with my surname. It's my father who used to do poetry and used Firdausi as our surname, so it's a Persian name, but I'm not Persian. So I think first question I get, am I Persian? I'm not. So there can be reluctance as well, but overall I think it's a useful thing to have as many languages as possible, because it is clearly, when you speak in somebody's mother tongue, the trust comes easy and rapport is very quick.
Okay. So look, we've got a lot of questions in the question room, which we won't be able to take them all. There have been a number of questions around work-life balance, which we'll pick up through the debrief session afterwards, and that will be circulated to participants, and also about COVID-19. But of course, this has been in our lives for months now, and I felt that I've slightly filtered those questions because I want you to give of your personal experiences in this webinar. So perhaps we can finish by, if you had something you could say to encourage those who are following on in your footsteps, what would be key? What would be, you know, one key message that you would like to give to perhaps younger psychiatrists following in your footsteps? So I'll start with Afita, and then I'll go to Mudassir, and then we'll finish with Hassan. Afita.
So to the young psychiatrists, it's a message to young psychiatrists. I'd like to say nothing's impossible, really. Aim high and just keep working hard and go for it. And whatever it is that you aspire to be, just go for it. There might be barriers in your way, but if you're determined enough, you can break all the barriers.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Mudassir.
So I would say, don't be afraid of failure. Is part of the game. So we fail and we get up and take chances. As in psychiatry, we say there's positive risk taking. So that's in our professional life as well. Unless we try, we will not get it.
Thank you. Hassan.
Thank you very much, Binu. Echoing other sentiments, and also what I said earlier on, whatever you dream of doing, you can do it. You can't be stopped as long as you're willing to work hard, make those sacrifices and keep going, especially when times are tough. And as I said, remember, the bigger the challenge, the better I perform, and believe you can, and you're halfway there. They're two quotes that really, really helped me in life.
Thank you so much. So we're coming to the end of our formal time. So may I take a moment now to firstly say thank you to the Royal College and to Isabel and Katie, who've managed us all in the background so well. I'd like to thank our speakers, Dr. Mahmood, Dr. Kazi and Dr. Firdausi, for sharing your stories and inspiring us, really inspiring us, and the chat room comments really are a tribute to that, and also for affirming us in this public space. Really sharing your success stories with such general personal insight, and also for keeping the issue of progression and diversity on the agenda with all its current and future challenges. And also thank you to all of you who have joined in with this webinar. All your questions from far and wide. You've clearly had you really had listened very carefully, and we can see that from the chat room and the questions. So remember, we will field all the answers in follow-up to you, and we'll send you the follow-up links to other events should you wish to explore those as well. So may I just say many thanks to everyone, and wherever you are, please stay safe and well. So best wishes from all of us, and we'll finish there. Thank you. Thank you.